Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Rabbi Dessler. Today is Tanit Esther, and there's a minhag. The halacha actually is that 30 days before a holiday. Yeah.
You don't have your mic anymore?
Nah, this has got a good mic over here. This mic is actually. Yeah, you can't hear it.
The voices.
Really? No, this is a very good mic, actually. Anyway, Kitzur is that the halacha is that 30 days before a holiday. What? What? No, it's fine. This works. It's fine. 30 days before a holiday, you're supposed to start already preparing for lachot. So the minhag actually for tomorrow on Purim is that after you have your, you wake up tomorrow, you do your tefillah, you do kriyat megillah. You're not allowed to eat before kriyat megillah, okay? And then you do the first mitzvah you're supposed to do after kriyat megillah, and tefillah is matanot levyonim. After that, you go do your seudah. Right, but in the Seudah, you have a whole entire day. There's an inyan of starting to prepare your halachot. Actually, the Chidah says that the best time to learn, as far as like having special siyata d'shmaya, is to learn in between the two Megillah readings. So that means sometime between tonight and tomorrow morning is the best time to do it. But the custom is to start preparing for Pesach. Okay, and so Rav Dessler is not going to teach you halachot of Pesach, but he's more teaching you about the hashkafot of Pesach. He's trying to teach you the philosophy behind Pesach. So he says as follows. In the Haggadah, he says this is delivered in 1944 in England. I can't do the British voice, but it's called the Seasons of Freedom. We're on page 11, Pesach. He says, if the Holy One, blessed be He, had not taken us out of Egypt, the result would have been that we, our children, our grandchildren, would be subject to Paro and Mitzrayim. How's that possible? What does that mean? That if Hashem didn't take us out of Mitzrayim, we would still be slaves to Paro and Mitzrayim? Is that possible? Look at every single ancient civilization. They crumbled and fell. Why would we assume that the Jewish people would still be slaves? Do we see an example where people are still slaves around the world from 3,000 years ago? Well, the answer is a sort of. We actually do. You have a philosophy, for example, like in India. Has anyone here been to India? So I visited India. Yeah?
I lived there for 12
Oh, I'm
months.
sorry. It's a tough place.
Wow.
Anyway, it's a tough place. Anyway, so India still has a caste system, right? So you still have people that were born into slavery and they'll always remain slaves. That's their mentality. And they believe they're stuck. You can never change. So this is what he says. He says, everything has both an inner and an outer aspect. Pnimiyut and chitzoniyut. The person whose ego is attuned to external sees only the outer aspects. In exile, for example, he sees only a nation without a land of its own. Politically and economically depend on others. A person's attuned to the inner truth sees the physical facts. But he sees them only as effects. The primary cause, the true cause, is the spiritual cause. The exile of Israel, in essence, is a spiritual state. It is a state of being alienated from its true selves, of being enslaved by the Yetzer Hara. In the physical world, this takes the guise of political or economic enslavement. This thought is expressed in the Haggadah when we thank God for our rescue from the physical exile and the redemption of our soul from the spiritual bondage. So one second. So what's he saying? Well, we understand that there's this, what I would say is a superficial versus a meaningful way of interpreting the world around you. And therefore, the two ways we can interpret the world is pnimiyut, inner and outer. A person who's only focused on the chitzoniyut, he doesn't understand that there's a spiritual nature to all things. Like so many people struggle today with the holiday. Like, you know, the halacha is like this. Someone asked me, are you allowed to shave and shower today and get a haircut? I'm like, technically, yes, you totally can. Actually, you can shave today. You can get a haircut today on Tanit Esther. Totally the halacha, you're allowed to, but it's not within the spirit of the day. So should you do it? I don't know, depends on where you're at. So if you have something that's pressing, you have a wedding to go to tonight or whatever, I hear it. But if you just want to get ahead because your custom is to shave on a Thursday, and you know because you want to get ahead of your schedule, then you might be shaving and getting a haircut for the wrong reason. So it has to do with how you perceive your reality. Do you see the world because from its inner space or its outer space? Are you looking at it from the pnimiyut, which is the spirituality of things, or are you seeing everything from a chitzoni perspective? And that is a lens. Slaves tend to see things only from an external view. It's all external. You know, not that they don't have a pnimiyut, but you first see things from the place of the slavery itself. The fact that you have what's this guy's name?
Ready?
This is for him. Can you give this to him? Thank you.
The guy with
Yeah, let's see a smile on his face. Anyway, so you have a Anyway, so you have an inner and outer reality. Okay, The inner and outer reality is such where this goes to her. Anyway, the reality is such where you have a reality where because we are material beings, because we are physical beings, we often will relate to the Gashmi self. So, for example, when you wake up, when you ever do that experiment where you say, "Hey, point to yourself." You ever see this? Point to yourself. Point to yourself right now. So most people will do this, right? That's not who you are. This is who you are, right? Right? You are. Well, it depends, right? But like, so like, think about it for a second. Meaning, like, if I was to figure out a way of exporting all of your memories and transferring them to somebody else's body, and I took their memories and I switched bodies, and you look in the mirror and you see somebody else's face. Are you still you, or are you somebody else?
Can you repeat that?
If I was to figure out a way of taking out all the memories from your head and putting them in somebody else's body, and then you're looking in the mirror and you don't see your face anymore, are you still you, or are you somebody else?
Great question.
So the answer is you're still you.
Rabbi,
Without
Jack
any
always wants to
memories?
disagree. Give me a reason why you want to disagree.
It's Mr. Grumpy.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
you know how when people do heart transplants,
Yes.
they find out that they end up getting depressed and all those things. Some of them don't.
Okay, they pull out some of their things, but that doesn't define. You are defined by your thoughts and your memories.
Absolutely.
That's what defines who you are. Let's say somebody gets plastic surgery and they look completely different. Who are they? They're still the same person they were there before.
100%.
You are your thoughts and your memories, period. So I could go ahead and take out your thoughts and your memories, put them someplace else, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you are your thoughts and your memories. So now what's interesting is that I just proved to you that our nature, if you understand that there's something more to you than just, but we automatically, intuitively relate to the chitzoni self first. We have to think about it for a second. Well, what is it? Which one is it? Like Jack was saying, well, maybe no, I disagree, right? Maybe it is it is not. It is somebody else.
Happy.
Right? So the truth is that like that thought experiment is another way of recognizing that we are pre-configured to relate to the world from a external place. We don't see things from a pnimi place. We have to work on seeing things from a pnimi place. When we see people, do we see them for who they are on the inside, or we just see what we see on the outside? Are we judging people by, the size of their car, by the color of their skin, by their ideas, or are we able to recognize that every single person is truly created, B'Tselem Elokim? So naturally, they did this experiment I saw a couple of days ago where they had like kids pointing at it was like an accordion of children, right? Like holding hands, right? And their skin color went from light to dark, right? And they wanted to see who's good and who's bad, right? So they naturally said, well, the darker people are bad.
Of course.
And that's nonsense. It's not true. So there's an automatic bias that people have. And part of becoming an adult is being able to undo those biases. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck in a juvenile way of looking at the world. Right? What made this country so amazing is that the founding forefathers understood that part of its Judeo values is that God created man in his image. Period. And therefore, there's no better or worse world, just different people. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, right, the mitzvah on Purim is of Matanot Yevanim and Shalach Manot, right? Why? So we know that one of the most amazing things of the Purim story is that the Jewish people were mityached, they became one. They were of one heart and one mind, almost like Vayichen Sham Ha'am, and the people encamped there. It doesn't say Vayachnu, Vayichan. And Rashi says over there that the Vayichan is in the singular to teach you that when the Jewish people were encamping on Mount Sinai, they were Ki'ish Echad V'lev Echad. They reached this one unified level. And that is a precursor to Mashiach. That is a precursor to bringing God into the world. So we're going out there and we're fighting all kinds of crazy wars, tariff wars and tax wars and all these crazy things. And what we really should be thinking about is, well, how do we make the world more unified? Right? And I'm not saying it's so perfect. Like I understand there's problems, you have crazy people today, whatever it is, but like really the hashkafa is, how do we help each other? And if that's not the hashkafa of the world, we're in trouble. That's what Hashem wants. Pesach is a time of, it's Zman Chirotenu, the time of our freedom. The thing that enslaves most people is their mindset. How you see the world. That's what makes you a slave. You can have a guy who's in prison who's free. He can think whatever he wants, he can be whatever he wants. You can have the guard standing there who's in prison. That's a weird thing. But what makes us free is our ability to think and see the world in its truest form, not a form that is somewhat superficial and intangible.
So is the argument to look inward or look outward?
We want to do both. You never ignore. Remember, in Judaism, we always want balance. To only look inward and not look outward is a problem. To look outward, you need both. You need to see the whole picture, the totality of all things. The Egyptian exile was a very particular aspect of the spiritual exile. In the Torah, Egypt was called Mitzrayim from the word metzer, which means to constriction and distress. It also signifies boundaries, right? Mina metzer katiyam. This expresses the oppressive and constrictive nature of the Egyptian exile. The strength of their boundaries is attested to by the fact that prior to the Exodus, no slave had ever succeeded in escaping from Egypt, right? Which is complicated because we know that there were slaves that actually escaped from Egypt, right? So on the spiritual level, Egypt is known to be as the acme of moral degradation, the pinnacle, the zenith of all moral degradation. You know that when you look at the world itself, the planet, and we know that different pieces of the planet are representative of different body parts, right? We know that Yerushalayim is the belly button, right? So Jerusalem is the belly button, and Egypt is straight down. What does that make Egypt? Right? Egypt, according to the Chachamim, is considered the crotch of the world. What's that? Yeah, we call it the heart. When we look at it, it's true. But we know that the Even Shestiyah is the birthstone, and therefore that birthstone is the beginning of all creation. And then just like the belly button is one of the first things that are created to go ahead and hold the fetus, we call Yerushalayim the belly button. There are different ideas. What's that?
Maybe the mouth.
Okay, it could be. I don't know. Whatever it is. Yeah, these are all theoretical. These are not like precise, ideas. These are more theoretical ideas, right? So, like the idea that the crotch of the world. So the crotch of the world is symbolic of a place that is steeped in all of the vile tumah in the world. We know that when Adam and Chava sinned, Adam was clearly angry at Chava. He's like, "What do you mean? Like, how did you do this?" He blamed her. Actually, he says, "The Chava, the Ishta, the woman that you gave me, she's responsible." So what does Adam do? Anything that any other reasonable man would do, he's like, I'm not talking to you. So he didn't speak to Chava for 130 years. I'm not talking to you, right? 130 years he didn't speak to her. Now, the Mikubalim teach us that during this time, there was another woman in the world who was not of physical form. She was a half demon. Her name is Lilith. And she would come to Adam in the middle of the night, and she would lay with him, and she would take his zera, his semen, and she would get pregnant. And she was giving birth to something called Shedim. All the Shedim in the world came from Lilith and Adam Rishon. Now the Shedim themselves are drawn to impurity. And the Chachamim say, Al Pi Kabbalah, that one of the reasons why the Makot happened the way they happened wasn't just accidental. Each Makkah was to destroy a different level of a different kind of shed of a demon that was created by Lilith and Adam Rishon. And they all kind of collated and congregated in this one area in Mitzrayim because that was the crotch of the world. And it was destroyed. It had to be destroyed in that unique way. So it's all tethered together. So Egypt wasn't just a place of, oppression. It was a much more vile place than just oppression and slavery. It was a place of spiritual depravity. It's interesting that Chizkuni says that the day that the Jewish people left, the day that they left Egypt, the day before, they signed in law in Egypt to allow homosexual marriages in Egypt. This is already 3,000 years ago, right? They have permitted, and that was also interesting about Mitzrayim, that most people don't know about this in history, it's the only ancient society that believed in polyandry. What's polyandry? Polygamy is one man with two wives. Polyandry is one woman with two husbands.
Oh.
Right? So women had the right to marry, they were senior positions, and they were allowed to have multiple husbands. Now this is complicated because you have no idea who the father is. Right? So this is why, by the way, Makot Bechorot was such a devastating makah in Egypt. Because if a woman was married to 4 men, and each man had a baby, each one would be called a Bechor. Right? So you could have one family, a nuclear family, with 4 firstborns.
Ouch.
Right? So a complete destructive, depraved place. Okay, we'll just do this one last paragraph and we'll call it a day. The title of Egyptian kings is Paro in Hebrew. Is also significant. In root meaning, the Hebrew, to lay open or to unite, implying that the goal of Egyptian rule was to break down the defenses of the person and the personality and lay it wide open to the inroads of the Yetzer Hara. This was a morally bankrupt place, and we're talking about these things right now because we're at the end of the month of Adar, the last month of the Jewish calendar. Purim is the pinnacle of us trying to achieve something called simcha, which is our alignment, aligning our soul with our personal goals. Okay? The month of Nisan is an opportunity for us to see the miracles. You don't see miracles, you don't see Yeshuot if you truly believe there's a possibility of growth and change. You cannot grow if you're depressed. You cannot be free unless you believe you are able to be b'simcha. Have an amazing day, have an amazing fast.